It's only me, and it's your next lesson on fractions. What we're going to look at today is fractions as numbers, and we're going to be plotting fractions on a number line. I'm going to jump straight in this morning, and as you can see on the board, there's a teacher with two pupils, and she's drawn a number line starting at 0 and finishing at 1, and she's divided her number line into equal parts, and she has drawn 5 arrows, and she's asking you, I'm thinking of a number that one of the arrows is pointing to. Can you guess my number? And then the question is, how many equal parts has the number line been split into? What does each interval on the number line represent? So when you're looking at that number line, what do these intervals, so that the little black lines, represent? And then what could Miss Hall's number not be? And what could Miss Hall's number be? And as per usual, if you want to have a go at trying to work it out before I explain the answer, please do. So what you really need to do is you need to count how many intervals there are, because that is going to tell you what your denominator is, what fraction we're talking about. And if you counted them, you should have found that the number line had been split into 7 equal parts. So each interval represents a 7th. Okay, so if you are actually doing that and plotting those numbers on that number line, you would obviously, the 0 was done for you, and then you have 1/7, 2/7, 3/7, 4/7, 5/7, 6/7, and then 1. 1 is your whole. And if you wanted to, you could write that as 7/7 when the numerator and the denominator are the same. So we've answered the first bit. So what does each interval on the number line represent? Well, it represents a 7th. And then we were asked, what could Miss Hall's number not be? And remember, she was just looking at those blue arrows. So she didn't look at 0, because there's no blue arrow against that, or 1. And she didn't look at the third interval, 3/7. So we know that Miss Hall could not be thinking of 0, 3/7, or 1. So what could she be thinking of? What are the fractions that are left? Well, she could have been thinking of 1/7, 2/7, 4/7, 5/7, or 6/7. I hope that makes sense, Willow class. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of plotting fractions on the number line. So what you should be able to see is a blank number line, apart from the 0 and the 1. So what I'd like you to do is try and work out what the line has been broken up into. What are the intervals? What do they represent? And how would you draw that? Okay? Sounds more complicated than it actually is. So the first thing you need to do is you need to work out what your number line is split up into. So you need to count 1, 2, 3, 4. So your number line has been split up into 4 equal parts. Now you know that as a fraction, if we're split it into 4 equal parts, we're talking about quarters. So each of these intervals represents a quarter. So if you were drawing and writing that, we've got our 0, you'd write 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and then 1, our whole, which also you could write out as 4/4. Okay, so let me just show you how I would have done it. So here we have our 0, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and then our whole. And as I said, you could have written that as 4/4. And sometimes it's easier actually to sort of visually to be able to see what that looks like. So underneath that, I've just drawn it, and I've drawn it a bit like a pizza, really, isn't it? So because I know that my denominator is 4, each of my drawings have been split into 4 equal parts. So for my 0, none of them are shaded in. But for my 1/4, I've shaded in 1 of them. For my 2/4, I've shaded in 2 of them. For my 3/4, I've shaded in 3. And for my whole, I've shaded in them all because it's 4/4 that I'm looking at. Okay, so let's do another one together. So here we have a number line, again starting at 0, starting at 1. And if you had to plot that number line, if you had to tell me which of those intervals, what they represent, what would it be? So start off, remember, counting. How many equal parts have you got? Well, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what fractions are we talking about? We're talking about fifths, okay, where your denominator, the number on the bottom of your fraction, is 5. So each of those intervals represents a fifth, okay? So if you were writing that, hopefully you might have done this, some of you, you'd have written 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, and then the 1, 5/5. And you might have drawn it. And because we're talking fifths, remember when you draw it, make sure your diagram, in this case I've been drawing pizzas again, is in 5 equal parts. Okay, so your 0 has none shaded in. Your fifth, your 1/5, has just got 1 section shaded in. Your 2/5 have got 2 sections shaded in. Your 3/5 have got 3 sections shaded in. Your 4/5 have got 4 sections shaded in. And then your whole has got 5 sections shaded in. Okay? Now, I'm going to move on to a slightly trickier question. And I'm up on the board for you to see for the moment. And it says, where would these fractions go on the number line below? And again, I've drawn the number line with starting at 0, finishing at 1. And I have written a third, an eighth, a half, and a sixth. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a clip where someone is explaining how they would answer this question. And I just thought it was really, really good. And remember, you know, as per normal, like we all work in different ways. So this is just one way of thinking, but I just thought it explained it quite well. So I'm going to show you that in a second. But if you want to have a go before you watch the clip, please do. After the clip, if you have time, turn to your Power Maths books and have a go at pages 134, 135, and if you want a bit of a challenge, 136. You're working brilliantly, Willow class, and I'm so proud of you. So keep it up, and good luck, Willow class. Have a great day.
Take a look at these fractions. What do you notice? What's the same? What's different? Well, the numerators are all the same. They're all 1. Do you remember what we call those kind of fractions? That's right. They're called unit fractions. So where would these unit fractions go on the number line below? We have a start point of 0 and an end point of 1. Which fraction would you start with? I think I'd start with the easiest one. The one that has a denominator of 2. Why? Because I'd only have to break that number line into 2 equal pieces. And that's usually where I start when I'm looking at a number line. I look at the midpoint. There's the midpoint, 2 equal pieces. That's where 1/2 goes. Now where should we go? Well, if we think about 2 equal pieces, and we divided each of those 2 equal pieces in half, what would we end up with? That's right. We'd end up with quarters, 4 equal pieces. The only problem is we don't have any fractions with a denominator of 4. But we do have one with a denominator of 8. What could we do with those 4 equal pieces to make it into 8 equal pieces? We could divide each of those 4 in half. That gives us 8 equal pieces. Do you see where 1/8 would go? Exactly. So we show 1/2 and we've shown 1/8. But how can we show 1/3 and 1/6? Well, I think we need to think about getting rid of some of these lines. Let's just keep it simple. Quarters and halves. We need to divide the number line into 3 equal pieces. Would that be greater than 1/4 or less than 1/4? 4 equal pieces, 3 equal pieces. Let's show that. We can show that by placing these orange lines on the number line. Those orange lines indicate 3 equal pieces. And now we can place 1/3 on the number line. Now, our last one, 1/6. What could we do to show 6 equal pieces? We've got 3 equal pieces. That's right, we could divide each of those in half. We can see here with the yellow line and the orange lines that we now have 6 equal pieces. And therefore, we can place 1/6 on the number line.